God used to punish Israel, but that also God told them to completely annihilate when they came back into that. Don't leave any of them.
It seems like to me that he's talking about him being righteous. He's looking at not one act. He's looking at the life of Lot.
Right. That's what he's talking about here.
And, he's trying to save his family. They're leaving. He's trying to save his family. But I think what we need to get out of that is that we all know that we're going to sin. And I know you can sin big enough and bad enough that, you can ruin your relationship with God. But we also have to believe that God looked at all the decisions that Lot has made.
Mm-hmm.
This is the area that he chose.
Yep.
Abraham, chose or was left with another area. Lot chose this area. And so I think it's a strong enough point for us to realize is that, and I always go back to not giving up. Lot didn't give up.
Right.
We don't need to give up. God knows our heart. He knows whether we're righteous or whether we're not righteous. And that's what we'll be judged.
And in that next story, knowing the heart, God saves another man. But yeah, and what Marty's talking about is what is read in verse 8 of chapter 2 of 2 Peter. Because it talks about how every day. So this wasn't just that one act. It was how he had lived from the time that he went there. At a great price. But he had tried to maintain his integrity that was looked upon as righteous before God. All right. Now then, in chapter 20 then, Abraham, now remember when we looked at that map, we said that, Zoar was down here where Abraham was at Mamre was up here at the oak. What caused Abraham to leave that area? And he heads out to the Negev. And when you look at the Negev, we said that that's a very dry, arid area. And if you've got lots of flocks and herds and so on, then why would I leave somewhere where I'm doing a pretty good job of keeping them? Why did he leave? And then in the term, it uses the term sojourn. What do we mean when we say sojourn? Moving around. You don't stay in one place. Down in Marshall, Texas, the East Side Church of Christ down there, there in Marshall, there's the Sojourners Camp where they all come in and so on. And of course, these people have been all over the country doing things at children's homes, and they go there and they work, and they'll go out to New Mexico one time, then they'll go to another place somewhere else in Texas, and they're sojourners. They go different places and they collect there. And when I was down there for that year, I had the opportunity to meet many of them, and a lot of them worship with the church there. It was, but sojourn. So he was sojourning. We're looking around now. One, we could say that he had to keep moving in order to find enough grass to feed his flocks and his herds, right? True. Do you think he was looking for Lot? When he left out of there, because he moved to the south, which is where Zoar was, and then it's toward the Negev, which was part of that area right there, do you think he was maybe looking for Lot? God had told him that, because he said, now think what the conversation was from Abraham and the Lord. Abraham said, if there's 10, you won't do anything, right? What did Abraham see when he looked that direction? So he knew that there wasn't 10. Did Abraham know if Lot had gotten out? We don't know that either, do we? He didn't know. And if you think about it, and here again, see, this is where, boy, trying to put this story together, we go back to 2 Peter and we see that Lot is righteous and so on, but yet it says that who did God remember out of there? And God remembered Abraham and what he had done. So Lot came out of there because my thought would be that when he hesitated, when Lot and his family hesitated and so on right there, kind of made his decision, didn't he? Told you what you need to do. You need to get out of town. You need to get out now. I've already given you a break. Told you that you could go to Zoar instead of the hills. Now, and they hesitated. What did the angels do? And what was that because of? Because of Abraham's relationship with God. So God remembered Abraham in this regard, and he took them out. So now then, Abraham is in the Negev, and he's wandering. And he finally settles in between Kadesh and Sur. And then he sojourned in this area. He's still moving around of Gerar. Now, Abraham says to Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. So Abimelech is the king of this region. And Abraham tells the king that Sarah is his sister. So Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. Now, okay, I'm a physical individual and a spiritual. Hopefully there's a spiritual part of it. Let's talk about the physical for just a minute. How old is Sarah? She's 90 or above. She's past childbearing, right? Because she herself got in trouble because she laughed when the Lord told Abraham that Sarah would conceive, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't like," but she did. At 90 years old, this woman was still beautiful enough that the king took her. Why? Now we're in an adult class. Why did kings take the women from there to do what? To produce childbearing. Well, how many kids did Sarah have? None. Now then, let's look at the other side of this for just a moment, because we always look at this side of the story. What's Abraham thinking? Who did he keep? Because when Abimelech's looking at this situation, now think about it, he's looking here and it's like, okay, there's that one, and well, she doesn't have any children. It looks really nice. She's a beautiful lady and everything. And then here's this Egyptian girl. Well, she's got that son, so that's got to be. So who is Abraham's wife? If Abimelech's looking at it, who's the wife? Hagar, right? And Abraham doesn't do it because who does he have a son with? Hagar. Now I'm going to ask this question. Do you think that this was really pleasing to God? Did God come to Abraham and in a face-to-face conversation tell him, that one don't work, I'll give you one? Does Abraham think that maybe that will happen with Abimelech? What is Abraham thinking? Now we look at this story, but let's think about this scenario in this situation. Because when Abimelech, and the story now goes that when Abimelech takes Sarah, he hasn't been with her yet, but God comes to Abimelech, and I want you to look at the conversation that goes on in this, quote, dream. It's not just it's a conversation. They're talking things over. And what gets Abimelech's attention? This would get my attention. What's God say? Huh? Thank you. That'll get your attention. You're a dead man. Okay, you got my attention. Now, what that you have taken is a wife. Now then, I want separation. Okay, here we go. Definition time. You know, I haven't hit you with one of these in a while. I want you to define grace, and I want you to define mercy. Because sometimes we kind of think that they're the same thing, and they are not. What is grace? What is mercy? Help me out.
I've always heard grace was getting a gift you didn't deserve. Mercy was getting something, or the opposite. Grace was something that you did not deserve. Mercy was not getting something you do deserve.
Okay. Now then, who does grace reflect on? The giver or the receiver? The giver. God has grace. I don't merit that. But because of who he is, grace is a characteristic of God, because he looks at his creation, took a handful of dirt, did CPR, and it became a living being. We were created out of dirt. He had already created dirt. We were made from dirt. Woman was formed from a rib. I always, that creation part got me, and I'm still studying and working on that part of it. Because like I say, if he created male and female right then I still go back over here, then why did he bring all the animals to Adam and say, trying to find him a helpmate if he created them at the same time right there? And then, so there's lots of things in that story that I'm still piecing together in that regard. But in this regard, grace, did God show grace to Abimelech? And did he, because grace was unmerited, Abimelech maybe had done something that was not in accordance with God. And I think that we don't have this conversation in between God and Abraham. What was that part of it? We've got the story of Abimelech, because what does Abimelech do? Abimelech shows his heart, because what does he immediately say? Now, it might have been influenced by God telling him, you're a dead man. That would make, you. But what does Abimelech say? Out of my heart, you have to know that I did not know that she was Abraham's wife. He told me. I asked. I investigated on this. He told me that she is his sister. How could I have known any different? See, Leon, that's my question. Was that pleasing to God? And especially after when God had talked face to face with him and said, now listen, a year from now, I'm going to be back here and you're going to have a son by Sarah. What is Abraham thinking?
Abraham had been through this before, and it turned out pretty good for him. And he did it this time with the same intent to deceive.
Yeah, because when he went into Egypt, we know that the ruler of Egypt had taken, and then when God took care of that situation again. But going back to what Leon said, do you really think that God was pleased with his action this time? Because wouldn't we say that if you really believed, would you not think and understand that God's got me? I don't have to worry about things. And then I go back to what we had talked about before, when Lot was taken by the kings during the battle, and Abraham had his army so what were you afraid of if God had blessed you? Like I said, I get a lot of questions from this story, and we don't know. But here's what we do know. He had not come near her, and the Lord said, and he said, and Abimelech says to the Lord, did he not himself say to me, she is my sister? Then God said to him in the dream, yes, I know that in the integrity of your heart you have done this. And I also, now here's where God steps in again, and he tells Abimelech, I know, and I kept you from sinning against me and didn't let you touch her. Now, therefore, you restore this man's wife, for he is a prophet. God's telling Abimelech, God has labeled this man so that Abimelech doesn't have to question, doesn't have to wonder what this relationship is. God explains it right here so that, is this, and we refer to that as one of those aha moments. Is this an aha moment to Abimelech? And I'm going to say, yeah, it is. Yeah, okay. I got this now. Now then, I think it's also interesting what Abimelech does. And this goes back, I don't know when this started. Okay? And so God tells him that this man is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die. You and all who are yours. It's not just you. Think with me for just a moment about what God told the children of Israel when they went back into the land. Take them all out. What does he tell Abimelech right here? I not only take you, but there's not going to be anything left of you, so that there will be some point later on where there could be sin coming from where you are. We say, well, and I have had people that will say, well, I just don't believe in a God that would do that. You're talking about God. He made man out of a handful of dirt, and you want to challenge him on something? Are you kidding me? God understands. God knows. God totally knows where this is leading. He already knows. He knows what's going to happen down the road. He knows how he's going to use those families from Lot's 2 daughters against Israel. And so what does Abimelech do? He rises early in the morning, called all of his servants. Now, I think this is the important thing first, because what does he do? Instead of just going out and doing this on his own, what does he do? He informs his whole group. I want everybody that's in my household to understand what is happening. And he puts this presentation together then and brings it to them that this man is a prophet. We will restore. And then he calls Abraham. And his question to Abraham is this: what have you done to us? Why did you do this? That you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin. You have done to me things that ought not to be done. Can you argue with Abimelech? When you deceive someone? What have you encountered that you have done this thing? And Abraham said, because and what is this? Oh, do we see any divine intervention in this process of Abraham's thought? Or is this just Abraham? This is Abraham. Now then, Leon, going back to what you said, ask the question that you asked. From what I get from this part of it, I don't think that it was pleasing to God. Do we know that God talked to Abraham or whatever in this regard? No, but I don't think it was pleasing to him. I don't think that this was what God, I think God would have rather that Abraham shown great faith and just said, she is my wife, and let things go on, right? Yeah, we're going to find that out. Yeah. They had the same father and different mothers. I'm sorry. Yeah, different mothers. So Abraham says, because I thought, surely there is no fear of God. Now, wait just a second, Abraham. Do you think that these people don't know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Do you think that they didn't see the cloud? Do you think that they didn't smell all that sulfur if the winds were kind of like they are here? The winds out of the north and blew down through that valley and across there. And it's like, you think that they didn't see that? You think that they didn't smell that? You think that people hadn't told them what had happened there? I'm assuming that there's fear of God throughout the entire valley and mountains in that entire area because of what they saw. And they will kill me because of my wife. So besides, she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. So, and Mary, where's Mary? There she is up